Hello out there. Hope you all are doing good. We're coming to you with a new Dakota Boys Talk Movies tonight. We're going to be giving our thoughts on the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight Trilogy in anticipation of Batman v Superman coming out here soon at the end of this month. We have done a commentary for Tim Burton's Batman. We have discussed Man of Steel. And this is going to be kind of our final dip into the water into doing this, I guess, before Batman v Superman comes out here. So
it's just 10 days away, isn't it? 11 days away?
From when we're recording this, yeah. Like 11? When does it come out on the 25th or 26th?
25th.
11 days from when we're filming.
Oh, man.
Recording this, however you want to put it. So, yeah, not too far. Not too far. So, we'll have to release this one soon. So, there had kind of... The 90s weren't the kindest to Batman. You had 1989, we had Batman. And Batman Returns was kind of...
It was interesting.
It was something. And then you had the Joel Schumacher films that basically defined movie Batman in the 90s, and it wasn't in a pretty picture. You had Nipplegate. You had Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze. You had Uma Thurman's terrible version of Poison Ivy. You had a terrible Bane. Just nothing was good. Chris O'Donnell in the movie at all. And especially Robin. So it was just a mess.
Personally, for me, the weak point was Alicia Silverstone.
And then you had Alicia Silverstone as Batgirl. And so there was just the 90s just weren't very kind to Batman, to a point where Warner Brothers just kind of took a break. But we all...
Actually, the horrible thing is they apparently were planning a sequel to Batman and Robin up until the movie came out.
Well, I believe that.
They had a script, and they were recording Nick Cage to play Scarecrow, who would actually make it on screen a few years later. Scarecrow the character, not Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he would as well. So that would have been interesting.
That would have been interesting. But there are things that just never came to fruition. Kind of like in there you had Darren Aronofsky almost get a Batman off the ground.
Which, thank God, he didn't.
And there were just kind of all these things that just never happened. And then somewhere around, 2004, Christopher Nolan was interested. And then he was, of course, just a guy named Christopher Nolan. Nobody really knew who he was unless you were a big fan of Memento, or some people really liked Insomnia, but he just wasn't the name he is today. And we got in 2006, right? Yeah. Batman Begins, and it was a very apropos name for that movie in terms of it was a new beginning for the Batman movies. It was also a complete kind of reimagining of just kind of superhero movies in general, and kind of just changed the game ever since, really, is what he did with Batman Begins, just in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the idea was to have a very real world take on Batman. The kind of
that's a good thing to say about Christopher Nolan is he's not one for fantastical. He likes things very real world in his stuff. Like it has to make logical sense to him, or he's not going to do it at all. I mean, there will be no penguin because it doesn't make any sense to me why there'd be a penguin looking man. You know, I mean, it's just, he's very like, it has to be just completely believable. So, he definitely was the one that kind of set them on that. Whether it's good or bad that they all have a tendency to lean that way now. Set a lot of superhero movies on that trajectory of kind of real world. Do you think, Dakota, that Batman Begins being a hit, kind of the initial excitement for The Dark Knight coming out in 2008, and then when it did come out, helped spur Watchmen to happen when it did?
Yeah, I would definitely say so, because Batman Begins kind of upped the ante in a lot of ways for comic book movies. I mean, this is at a time when we had gotten, what was it, the two X-Men movies, Spider-Man.
We got 2 X-Men movies. Before Batman Begins, we would have had, the first 2 Sam Raimi Spider-Mans. Daredevil.
Yeah, so we didn't really get that many comic book movies at that time, but studios were trying to make a ton of them, and production values on them varied a lot. I mean,
yeah, like drastically.
Yes, you had Ang Lee supposedly just
The Hulk
making a really complex movie, and then the finished product was like, okay. You had the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, which just really emphasized the lightheartedness of the character.
Yeah, and from the first one to the second one, you can see there was a boost in the budget.
Yeah,
where the special effects got a lot better in that second one.
And the interesting thing is, Sam Raimi kind of embraced the campiness of the villains, which I think is kind of Green Goblin. Of course, a lot of people tend to bring up the fact that he was a little too campy.
Avenge me!
Bryan Singer especially tried to place his heroes in a very real world setting, to the point where he actually just straight up said that you're probably never going to see a movie with Beast, Mystique, and Nightcrawler in it, just because there'd be too much makeup and blue on the screen for people to really focus on what's going on in the movie. And here we are now, and all 3 of those characters are going to show up in an X-Men movie. So
and have.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it was a different time from now.
Yeah.
It seems like every few years kind of something happens to kind of up the ante in these comic book movies. And it all started here.
This is the one that really set a new precedent. But again, Christopher Nolan will credit Bryan Singer's X-Men with why he started thinking that he'd be okay taking on Batman.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting to think about, too, just because I think the fact that Bryan Singer maybe doesn't get the credit he deserves for having a more reality-based comic book movie. Like, let's put him in a world that isn't so fantastical.
Yeah.
See if we can make it work. Because, I mean, because he even jokes about it in the first X-Men where he has Cyclops say to Wolverine, what were you expecting, yellow spandex? And it was like, it was kind of like their way of saying to the audience, we're not going that fantastical,
Unfortunately, now you have all these fans who are saying, okay, put away the leather and don this yellow spandex already.
Yeah. Well, that's because we're inundated with spandex now.
Yeah.
It's where nobody thinks twice about it. Whereas Bryan Singer was like, I don't know, are you ready for spandex? Because people have kind of been making fun of Superman for being so spandexy. But now it's just part of the movie world is spandex.
Yeah. Just kind of get back on course. Batman Begins was to comic book movies what Casino Royale was to spy movies. It kind of took things in a whole new direction, and a lot of people are saying you shouldn't try to go back to the way I know the James Bond,
and those are both that came out in the same year.
Yeah, we had the James Bond movie Spectre that kind of tried to bring back some of the classic Bond tropes, and a lot of people were kind of saying, "What? Why? We've moved beyond that." And you have other people saying, "Oh, well, good try, but you just sucked at it. So try again."
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, that's true. That pretty much is kind of a good SAT answer to to what it is. But what are your, like, Batman Begins? How did you feel about it? I think most people will agree it's a really well done movie, but as far as a Batman movie, how do you feel about that movie, Dakota?
Oh man. To be honest, I was actually a little hesitant to go see this, which is why I didn't go see it when it came out. My birthday came around and my friend was like, "Hey, let's go see a movie tonight. Let's go do something." So we went to go see it. And the reason I was a little hesitant is, well, nobody knew who Christopher Nolan was back then.
Yeah.
So
This is before they were giving these multi-million-dollar movies to just any independent director like they do all the time now.
Yeah. But yeah, you didn't feel like you could trust him to give you a good movie. And then the thing that put Christian Bale on everybody's map before this movie was American Psycho. So you had some...
Or Newsies.
Oh, come on. So you had the guy from American Psycho.
Or Newsies.
Playing Batman, and he's British, and you're just like, oh man, do I even want to see this movie? And I went to see it, and it kind of just floored me. From Gary Oldman's turn as Commissioner Gordon, who was kind of a breath of fresh air because he wasn't just the old policeman who would, wore the blue uniform and would tell his men, book 'em, or
Yeah. Or wait for the red phone to start ringing or something. Yeah.
But yeah, he was.
Well, I think that is what is interesting about this trilogy too, is that every major supporting role is by an Oscar caliber actor,
with the exception of Katie Holmes.
Yeah. And not only are they Oscar caliber people or Oscar nominated, Oscar winning people, but they give performances in this movie that are really good too. I mean, Liam Neeson, playing his kind of teacher, and then eventually find out is Ra's al Ghul. He's real good in that role. Morgan Freeman in the limited screen time he has. You wanted more of these people. They just did so good in those roles.
Rutger Hauer.
Yeah, Rutger Hauer
doing an amazing job.
Didn't you get the memo? Yeah, and so I mean, I was really impressed with this movie, and so there was a time when you went, did I just like it because it was better than Batman and Robin? That's kind of your first thought after you saw this movie. When I saw it was new, I was like, was it really that good, or was it just better than Batman and Robin? No, it actually is good. It actually is a good movie with a cool kind of hero origin story to it. And that's another. I thought Linus Roach, who played his father.
Yeah, playing Thomas Wayne.
He has a small role, but I thought his role as Thomas Wayne was really, really good too, and kind of how they kind of brought those memory flashbacks in with him. That would just worked well. And Mike O'Kane, he just nailed it as Alfred. Where it just was like, with the exception of Katie Holmes, you're just like, wow, they have to make another one of these. And of course they did. And so the first one, Christopher Nolan says how in the first one you want to deal with fear, which is why, which is Bruce overcoming his own fear, or embracing it, maybe to be a better word, and becoming the Batman protector of his city. And then, of course, what better villain to have for that when you talk about fear than Scarecrow. And of course they had, is it Cillian or Killian?
I think it's Cillian. That's what everyone seems to say.
Okay. Well, yeah, he plays Scarecrow, and in fact, did Christopher Nolan have a different role for him in mind initially?
He actually did try out for Bruce Wayne. That's
tried out for Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah. I think he would look good in those suit with those with his lips just kind of enhancing the Batman profile.
He's so like he would have to do some serious bulking. He's so kind of thin. Tom Wilkinson, that's another one you bring up.
Yeah.
Who does a really good job. He's a British guy playing an Italian mobster.
Yeah.
Very believably.
That was an interesting turn, because before this, he had actually garnered a ton of acclaim for, I can't even remember the movie he won an Academy Award for. And then he was, of course, in Braveheart 2, Men in Pants, also known as the Patriot.
Yes, yeah, he was. Yeah, it's Braveheart 2, Men in Pants. Yes.
But, yeah, it was an interesting turn from him to see him wielding a gun, threatening to kill somebody in public just because he can.
Yeah.
Was
like, bam! Nobody say anything. Yeah, just a well-rounded cast and just delivered a really solid movie that you had a villain that needed to be stopped, but it also gave room for Batman to come into the fold once again, and yeah, in a really cool way, a really exciting way. And then all of a sudden there was talk that there'd be a sequel, and everyone flipped out because they said, and playing the Joker will be Heath Ledger. No! Everyone freaking out.
Yeah.
Heath Ledger, 10 Things I Hate About You, Heath Ledger. A Knight's Tale.
I think most of the backlash was because he had just done Brokeback Mountain.
Yeah. The Gay Cowboy. Yeah.
And, I mean, yes, the movie won an Academy Award and people loved it. But it also had a lot of detractors.
Yeah. Well, for me, it had nothing to do with Brokeback Mountain so much as it had to do with, like, it was hard to picture. I think part of it was like I felt like Heath Ledger was still too boyish
to
play the Joker, and just like, I don't know, just like he didn't feel like he would fit. But of course, it was a time when we were all glad to be wrong, or the people who just didn't say anything and later went, "See, I told you it'd be okay." It's like, no, you doubted too. You just didn't say anything. We all doubted.
Yeah, the amazing thing about The Dark Knight is that the first trailer for the movie was just so awesome. That's the only trailer they used for it, with the exception of the ads on TV. But yeah, what is it? We've had 4 trailers for Batman v Superman. Christopher Nolan decided, nope, I'm just going to make one awesome trailer, and that's what we're going to stick with.
Yeah, he plays it pretty close to the chest, too, and so, yeah. But, yeah, and then you had this movie came up, and, of course, in this movie, this is one where he dealt with chaos, and Michael Caine sums it up best when he gives a backstory, something he dealt with as a young soldier of sorts. And he says how some men just like to watch the world burn, and of course that's why they used it in the trailer Dakota's referring to, because that is really what's happening in this movie, is that Batman has to figure out, how do I stop a villain that is sporadic and he's the worst kind of villain in terms of he has absolutely no scruples, He has no care of who gets put in harm's way. And so how do you stop a man like that is really what Batman has to battle in this movie, when it's just absolute chaos. And then in this movie, we're also introduced to Katie Holmes' replacement, played by Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, the transition between the two actresses was pretty seamless. I don't think anybody really...
It was seamless, but at the same time, it was kind of jarring just because they don't look anything alike.
Yeah.
But then we're also introduced to Harvey Dent, who has been in the comics for a long time, because he is the district attorney in Gotham City that eventually becomes Two-Face, which is what happens in this movie. And of course, he basically seals his own fate with the line, you either live long... What is it? You live long enough to see yourself...
You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain.
Yeah. And kind of sealed his fate with that line where you're like, well, he's becoming the villain for sure, even if you weren't familiar with who Harvey Dent does become. But once again, it's just like... Well, a lot of people consider it as just one of the best movies of ever. Some people just call it ever. Some people call it of the 2000s. Some people call it, best movie of the decade. Whatever you want to call it. It's a well done movie. The one thing that probably is lacking in this movie is Batman.
Yeah. This movie had a lot of character development. Not a lot of it dealing with Bruce Wayne or Batman.
Not a whole lot, because there was so much that had to be done with the Joker's plotline, and then Harvey Dent becoming Two-Face.
Yeah, a lot of people were a little... One criticism of the film was that the whole story with Two-Face probably should have been saved for another film.
Yeah, and yet that's part of what they used as the Joker's plan. And so, yeah, it was just kind of... I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where you end up kind of forgiving the movie's flaws because overall it's just an entertaining movie, a gripping movie, and memorable. To most people, I think this is the most memorable of the trilogy. I have a soft spot for Batman Begins, but a lot of people consider this the best of the trilogy or most memorable one, however you want to put it. Part of that is just due to the fact that Heath Ledger died, but even if he would have lived, it would still be considered a great performance, I'm sure.
Would he have won the Academy Award, though? That's the real...
That's the real question, is if he would have won the Academy Award if he would have lived.
Because a lot of people think it was kind of just given to him kind of as a salute to...
Sorry, you're dead.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's kind of the thing is you just have the Dark Knight is just like ends up being a lot more of a complicated movie than Batman Begins because there's a lot more going on.
Yeah. One thing that kind of sticks out over the years, I still really love the movie, but some of the themes and some of the things people say kind of get repetitive after a bit.
Well, it's because Christopher Nolan has way too much exposition in his movies.
Yeah. And I feel like that's probably the only real criticism I have.
But that's of any of his movies.
Yeah. Oh, besides the fact that, I was a little steamed that Two-Face did die even before he could really become Two-Face.
Yeah, become the true crime lord Two-Face.
Yeah, you saw a little bit because you do see he does take a couple people hostage and he flips the coin and there's some shooting of people and it was all... I thought it was pretty intriguing to actually watch.
But again, I think it's Christopher Nolan keeping his movie in reality where he's probably like, well, how long can a guy with a half-burnt face really live?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yep. But just as you think the movie can't get any fuller than this, 2012 comes along, and out comes The Dark Knight Rises, which is even fuller
Yeah.
of subplots and things going on and people to follow. And the movie kind of ends, and you're still a little dizzy from how many things go on in The Dark Knight Rises. Not that it's a bad movie, but there's a lot going on.
I think one thing that kind of got to me, that bothered me, is when we meet Bruce Wayne, he seems to be crippled, and they never really explain as to why.
Well, he goes to the doctor, played by that shorts guy from Reno 911, and it's like he's basically ruined his knees doing ninja stuff, apparently.
Even though he was only Batman for like 18 months.
And so, but how long was he overseas doing Batman-y things?
Yeah, that's...
as a League of Shadow guy. Anyway, the bad part is how they deal with it, with his magic knee braces.
Yeah.
He puts on magic knee braces, and all of a sudden, it doesn't matter. He can run just like he usually does, kick just like he usually does. In fact, when he puts on the magic knee brace, he can kick down a cement pillar.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
That's the one distracting part. On to the good stuff. Right off the bat, we get to meet Selena Kyle working as I don't know what to call her, a server? At this.
Yeah, she's working as kind of one of the waitresses at a fancy dinner party at the Wayne Manor where Bruce doesn't show his face.
Yeah. Anne Hathaway did a pretty good job, too, because she goes from kind of playing this awkward young lady to being this...
Yeah, kind of in a matter of just 10 seconds,
Yeah.
she goes from being like, oh, I'm a lost servant girl to... I can hold my own jewel thief.
Yeah, she pretty much tells Bruce Wayne, I don't want to beat a cripple. So.
Yeah, and this movie kind of starts with how many years is it supposed to be after Dark Knight? Was it 8?
Oh.
Like, isn't showed his face in like 8 years or something?
Yeah, he's supposed to have been. One of the comics that kind of inspired this was The Dark Knight Returns.
Right, because kind of what happened is, of course, if you're not familiar, at the end of Dark Knight, it ends with Batman deciding he will take the blame for the terrible things that had happened in Gotham that Two-Face had actually done to make Harvey Dent seem like the hero, so that they're basically making an elaborate lie so that they can help fight crime through the law system in Gotham.
Yeah.
And so because of that, Batman kind of disappears, and it causes Bruce Wayne to become kind of a recluse.
Yeah, because all of a sudden the city wasn't lurking full of evil people anymore. Yeah, one thing I think that really influenced how this movie played out was Heath Ledger's death, because Christopher Nolan said under no uncertain terms was he ever going to recast the Joker, because he felt Heath Ledger just did too good of a job. So that, I think, in a way, kind of impacted what he wanted to do. We finally got to see a really cool Bane in this, played by Tom Hardy, who looks like he, was having steroids for breakfast for about a year.
Yeah. What was weird was he's not only muscular, but he allowed himself to kind of get chubby, but he doesn't seem chubby because he's so muscular.
Yeah, it was... Oh, man. And for some reason, he was wearing the mask that helped him breathe, which is a pretty cool story interesting story, not cool, as to how he got that way. And he sounded...
to know how I got this mask.
And he sounded like Sean Connery for some reason.
Yeah, he did. And it was like they wanted him to still have that luchador mask look. Yeah. But they needed to think of a way where it was more real world. So it's like, let's give him a breathing mask, because Darth Vader is very realistic. So, I don't know. which I didn't find as distracting as some people just like wanted to throw their shoe at the screen. Yeah. They were so angry having to listen to this the whole movie whenever he talked or whatever, and
some people, I'm not. God, this was some years ago. It was when The Dark Knight Rises finally came out on DVD. I had asked somebody at work if they had seen it, and she's like, "No, I can't understand what that bald guy in the mask says, so I'm not even going to try." And I was like,
the bald guy in the mask.
I was like, "Oh, okay. Is it really that hard for people to understand him?"
I don't know. I guess I didn't find it that hard. There was only a few parts in the movie where it was like kind of like a deterrent to where it kind of hurt the scene because you're focusing so hard on what he said. But otherwise, I don't know that out of any of the things I could pick in this movie as problematic, that wasn't really one of them for me. There were other things that I would pick on as more problematic than that.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can't blame Tom Hardy for that because that was not his actual voice.
Yeah.
They kind of like Christian Bale with his, "I'm Batman."
Yeah, post-production made it a little different than it was. Yeah, a lot of people blame Christian Bale for the Batman voice, but Christopher Nolan is the one who made it more like this. Yeah, because it gets really bad. There's that one scene when he first confronts the Joker at that dinner party where he's like, "Then you're going to love me." Like, when he says that, it just feels like it's blasting out of the screen at you. And it's just like, yeah, just like they kind of overdid the Batman gravelly thing. Even worse at certain times, it felt like. But,
at the time, a lot of people overlooked it, but this is for you Game of Thrones fans out there. You do see the actor who plays Littlefinger in the very start of this movie as a CIA agent who takes these men on his plane in what is one of the coolest action sequences ever shot.
Yeah, that plane scene at the beginning of this is crazy. Just crazy. That would have been a cool scene. You didn't have the opportunity to see this on IMAX, but that would have been a cool scene to see on IMAX. But yeah, this in the word for this movie, Christopher Nolan was focusing on was pain. That everything from Bruce Wayne's knees to the fact that Bane breaks Batman's back is just dealing with the pain, and I think even like emotional pain to a certain extent in this too, and having to combat that and come through that, and again, it's kind of one of those things where this probably isn't your favorite in the trilogy, but it doesn't make it a bad movie either.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where, when they kicked off this with Man of Steel and they still had Christopher Nolan be involved in that, I mean, you can easily see why this Batman can't be in this new DC universe. It just would have been very hard to have such a grounded superhero in the world they're going to be building now, especially when you just see the Suicide Squad trailer. It's like that is way more fantastical than anything that Christopher Nolan did. And so, it's kind of why they just kind of had to, after Man of Steel, realize, well, we're going to have to recast Batman and kind of start anew. But this Dark Knight trilogy, though, is a very well done and just entertaining trilogy to watch. I mean, yeah, there's one that you like better than the others or something maybe, but they're all very good and very watchable.
Yeah.
And so,
for me personally, I think I actually like The Dark Knight Rises more.
More than what?
More than all three of the movies, any of the other movies.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Is it because of Tom Hardy?
No. As cool as that frock coat looks on him, no.
Yeah, I forgot about the coat. Yeah. That is a cool coat.
This movie just kind of had a bunch of cool things that I liked about it. South Dakota having a famous sports team to take on the Gotham
That's
Knights.
right, the Rapid City Bandits or something.
I think it was the Rapid City Monuments. Is what
Oh yeah,
there's-
monuments. That's right.
Yeah, they're white and blue. Good solid color to have.
Yeah, that was funny.
Well, and another thing is the scenes with Morgan Freeman and Christian Bale. I thought were always really good too.
Yeah, as this trilogy went on, they enhanced the Morgan Freeman stuff, and he was a character that got better and better with what they did with him. So I think they realized that, he just kind of underutilized the first one. He was like here's the technology for you, cape, and things like that. And yes, it comes in black, but, and then they realized that, once he got into Dark Knight, he became kind of like the, is it right that you're doing this type thing? And, he just kind of developed more of a friendship with Bruce to where, they could go deeper with him. And of course, the Dark Knight Rises, you see that even more.
Yeah.
So.
And then there's the underground prison that Bruce Wayne is eventually sent to.
Yeah, that's an interesting sequence, and just what that, with Bruce there, and then the history you find out of that pit in terms of Bane's history and certain other people. So.
Yeah, the broken back part bothers a lot of people, but I kind of just go with it.
Yeah, the bigger thing with people is how did he get like halfway around the world so quickly, and why is there a television in the jail that gets Gotham news? Except that Bane made it happen, I would assume, is probably why there's Gotham News. Bane wanted him to see it, so a lot of people forget that. But yeah,
I just love the time that he's of this movie where it shows him in the, they call it, they call it the pit?
Yeah, Sarlacc pit.
But,
I don't know specifically what it's called.
Okay. But you see him training, you kind of, to get back in shape, because apparently at the start of this movie he wasn't in Batman shape anymore. You see
There's
him.
no Rocky montage though, unfortunately.
Yeah, you see
no punching half of a cow.
and then the score for this movie was really good too.
Yeah.
Probably more so than any of the others.
Yeah, it could be. Musically, it might be the best. In what they, using the Batman theme that was already established, and then just kind of enhancing it with the new stuff. It was a pretty solid soundtrack, or film score, I guess would be the more proper term, since it's original music. So, which is, I think in this one, was it solely Hans Zimmer?
I think it was.
I think in the first one is the only one where James Newton Howard and Hans Zimmer did it together.
Yeah.
And then it was Hans Zimmer just, from then on, I think. But, and then, of course, he did Man of Steel, which I think is one of the highlights and enhancers of that movie is the score for Man of Steel. There's some really good music in that, which is why if you listen to our Man of Steel review, I used it at the end. Some of it, just because it's good stuff. So, yeah, but as far as, like I said, it'll just be interesting. It seems like this new Batman is still going to be not so campy.
Yeah.
But it will be interesting just to see, like, how this new Batman will fit into this world. And we know it's going to be a world that's going to be a little more fantastical than Christopher Nolan allowed in his universe, which I think will be fun to see on screen again.
Oh, yeah.
Batman taking on a more motley crew of criminals like Killer Croc and things like that.
Well, growing up, one of my favorite shows to watch on Saturday morning was the Batman animated series.
Yeah.
And as cool as that show is, we've never seen a Batman being close to the way that Batman was. And I'm hoping it's a little more...
Yeah, it feels like they're leaning more that way, where it's going to be like, it'll still have that kind of moody atmosphere, but there's still going to be, that kind of like
where he's a great detective.
Yeah,
and
like he's a detective, and there's kind of the more
he has these inventions. That
right,
pretty
and the
much help
villains
him.
maybe are a little outlandish, but at the same time, you believe them and things like that because it's been in the past. Even when it's overly campy, if it's done right, it's okay. You know, like a lot of people still hold Spider-Man 2 in high regards, and when you look at that, I mean, Dr. Octopus is kind of a ridiculous villain, like that these tentacles he can control 4 other arms with just his human mind is kind of ridiculous, and then they start controlling him, but you're okay with it because the whole overarching story of that movie and the story arc of it is just good. And so we're kind of hoping that maybe we can go more in that direction without going too camp.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it will be cool to see that. And again, like I always say, I just hope it's good.
Yeah.
I just hope it's good, no matter what they do, as long as it's good. That's the main thing. But the Dark Knight trilogy, they're great 3 films to watch. If you haven't seen them, check them out.
As far as trilogies goes, this is definitely the Godfather of our generation.
The Godfather of comic book movies, in a sense.
Yeah. Except the third one doesn't suck. People say it does, but it doesn't.
People say it do, but it ain't. It don't. I don't know what I'm saying, but yeah, it doesn't suck.
Yeah.
I understand people's qualms with it, but I think if you just kind of just watch it for what it is, it's still a really great movie with, a lot of good stuff in it. It's hard. I don't know if I'd put suck as the word. Although I do like how it should have ended with with when the woman dies and they're like, worst death ever, because that is kind of hammy. But
yeah, Marianne Cotillard.
but other than that, still great stuff to watch. And yeah, hopefully you're excited for Batman v Superman, which we were just realizing is probably going to be our next new movie review. So be looking for that, in the near future after that movie is released. We'll get that out there. And hopefully have good things to say about it, but only time will tell. So with that, we'll close out this episode. Remember to subscribe, give us some feedback, like us on Facebook, where we give you updates and things like that. Give us your comments or questions or ideas or whatever it happens to be.
Fan theories, we'll take them all.
Fan theories, anything like that.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. Let us hear it.
Yeah, we're okay with it. We're big boys. We can handle it. So yeah, please take advantage of those. And thank you for listening to this episode, but just listening to just the podcast in general. That's awesome. We appreciate that. Don't take it for granted. But yeah, we'll just close out this episode then. So this is Steven.
And this is Dakota.
Have a good night.